G'day folks, Rod Moore here from Moore Art School and welcome to another episode of Learn to Paint TV. Got a great little project for you today. We're going to do a painting of Wappa Dams, which is in the hinterland here on the Sunshine Coast. And the subject we're going to paint is the reflections of a hillside and the trees reflecting in the dam. I did this subject on my recent 30-day plein air painting challenge and it came up quite well. I'll show you a photo of it there. So I was reasonably happy with that. It needs a few little modifications, but overall it's not a bad painting and I thought it would make a good subject for us to try today. So we're going to blow it up onto a bigger canvas. This is a 16 by 20 canvas and we'll be using the acrylics and I think it'll turn out a great little painting. So let's get busy painting. So as always, we'll do step one of the Moore method of painting, which is to do our basic drawing, mapping in here where all of our key elements are going to go and our big shapes are going to go. For that, I'll start off with a little small flat brush, and I've got ultramarine blue and permanent crimson from the Artilia Interactive range. So that's the range of acrylic paints that we're using here today. So I'll just take my brush and swish it in some water, and we'll just make up a nice loose paint just for us to start out with. Just a dark is all we're after here, and we want to use a bit of water in that just to make sure the paint's not too thick. Okay, and we're going to have the hilltop, it's going to run through there and something like that. Just make it an interesting shape. You don't have to get it exactly perfect. And then this embankment here is going to sit around about there. So what would that be? About a third? Yeah, around about a third for the embankment, the distant embankment there. And then what's really key to this painting is that we have these beautiful gum trees that are on the embankment there. And then that's their reflections in the water that really make the painting here. So let's just get in a couple. Now don't make them all the same height. You need a little bit of variety in the shape and height of them. Okay. And you need a little bit of breathing room as well between them. Okay, and we'll pull those reflections down into the water and create a really nice little effect in there. And then there's a slightly smaller one, but a warmer one that's sitting on the embankment there. And this really is the essence of good painting, you know, is placing these big shapes in the right locations, understanding that, you know, we've got three trees here, we don't want them all the same, and we don't want to have them, you know, three in a row, you know, in a nice orderly row. So we're clumping these two together with some other bushes, and then we'll have this one standing out, which will be, you know, warmer and brighter, and that'll sort of be where the eye is going to be drawn to. Okay, so it's about understanding those sort of placement issues, getting the big shapes in right. Okay, so we're going to start blocking in now, and the blocking, I'm going to start off with this distant mountain, and then we'll come into these in here, and then we'll go back to the sky and the water. So I want to establish my values pattern initially. That's my first objective. So I need blue and red, so I'll take that there, and I need white in the first instance. Okay, so this is step two of the Moore method now. And I want to get that on the blue side, not on the red side. And I want it to be slightly lighter than that. I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow ochre to grey it back a little. Okay, there we go, that's good. And I'll add a bit more blue into that mix. So it's a bluey grey is what we're after. It was late afternoon and the sun was quite low and it was clipping on the treetops and things. But it also casts therefore a greyer, cooler shadow, okay, which is what we've got there. Now, because I'm painting on quite a large canvas here today, we're going to need a lot to paint. You can do this painting on a smaller canvas, that's no problem. Try it on a 12 by 16 inch. I just happen to have a couple of big canvases laying around, begging to be painted on, so that's what we're doing. Now as we come down, I want to shift this tone just slightly. I want it to become just a little bit lighter as it gets down lower, okay? So I've run out of paint, so I'm going to need to mix up some more. And I'm using the same sort of formula, but I'm just going to go for a very subtle temperature. I'll make it a little bit cooler, okay? As you can see there, it's a little bit cooler, but that's probably a little bit too blue now. So add a bit more red. Okay, so you should always mix up more paint than what you think you're going to need. Okay, but fortunately, I think we're right. Now I'll just integrate some of that because it is quite a bit cooler. I'll just push some of it back up a bit higher. And you can see that's a little bit just on the cool side there. Now we need to come forward and have a darker value in these trees. So it needs to be a little bit warmer and a little bit darker than the background here so that we can get that separation that we're looking for and get that feeling of depth. So I'll pop up some more paint. So we won't have any white in the mix for this part. It'll just be pure paint. And we'll take our blue, we'll take our red, mix those together. Going to need more red in that mix. Okay, now if I pop that on, you can see that that is quite a bit darker and definitely coming forward from the background. Like so. I might go just a touch redder. Actually, no, I'll go a little bit bluer. I want that one to be a bit warmer. Now we can separate those using the highlights. Just with careful placement of the highlights, we'll get some separation in there. We'll pop in our shadow. Oh, sorry, our reflections, not our shadows. Pop in some reflections in here. And we'll do that just by simply dragging down these darks into the water initially. So, this is an up and down vertical motion for the reflections. And what we might need to do is to spray this with some water when I go to add in the highlights, just so we get a nice soft blend in there. So we'll have a look at that later on. I'll show you how I would normally do that. If you're using these Acrylic interactives, then they're really good. And take a chunk of that blue there, take a chunk of white, mix that up. The sky is going to be fairly static. It needs to be light enough to give us that counterplay with the top of the hill here. That's around about it there, I think. So I'll just work my way along the top there. Don't worry about getting it neat. Get it a little bit rough, it'll look better. You know, if you get a hard, neat line there, it just won't look natural because, you know, that's a whole lot of tree tops and things along the top of that hill. The only thing is, if your paint's a little bit wet there, just be careful you don't drag that dark paint up into your sky too much. A little bit won't matter. Okay. A little concerned this will dry a bit dark, but if it does, when we come back in step 3, after everything's had a chance to dry, I will just lighten the sky off. So we'll wait and see. Just my intuition's telling me at the moment I'm perhaps a little dark with that sky. But it's a fairly flat, neutral sky. It's a nice sunny day, so there's not much going on. That leaves our water area in the bottom here. I'm going to do just a rough sort of blocking of this now, because what I want to do is when this is all, when we come back and I've got these highlights established, then we'll work on the reflections and get them just so. For the moment, I'm just guessing, so, which I'm quite prepared to do. I don't mind guessing a little bit, but to get the reflections looking accurate, it's better if we have the highlights on first. I'm happy with that. There's a few rough areas here, which I think we'll correct those as we go with our highlighting everything in step 3. For now, I just want to get colour down, get our values right with our main shapes, which I think we've done. Probably need to connect those up, so there's a few adjustments. You can see the trees are connected there, but I've got sky in between, so I need to connect that. There's a few little things like that we need to do. However, the paint is now getting to that tacky stage, and with acrylics, that's the worst time to work with them. So I need to let this dry off completely. Then we'll come back with step 3 and we'll do our details, highlights, finishing touches, and a little bit of tidy up work as well. And I think we're on track to have a nice little painting coming along. So give this a bit of a break, half an hour to an hour, and then I'll see you after that and we'll get underway for step 3. Cheers. Now we're going to do step 3 and start to bring this painting alive. So step 3 of the Moore method of painting, of course, is our details, finishing touches, and highlights. And I think what we're going to do, we'll start in this background mountain here. Now, it's come out a little bit darker than what I would have liked. So I'm hoping when we apply some highlights and things over the distant area, that it will start to bring it all together. And then when we hit this with some warmer highlights, it'll bring those trees out forward even further. So we're going to run some highlights along this mountain. Now, we're not going to paint trees, we're just going to paint the effect of light catching on the top of the trees, okay? And the way we do that, to get the highlight colour for this right, what we need to do is start off first of all finding that background colour. So we know it's blue and red, and I did have a little bit of grey and a little bit of yellow in there to grey it, and there was a little bit of white in there. So let's just start with that as a starting point. Now you have to remember with acrylics, it will dry a bit darker. So the original mix that I mixed up on the palette is going to look just a little bit lighter than this, as that is there, right? So I think that's reasonably close. It's close enough for our purposes to help us get a good highlight colour. So how do we highlight on top of this shadow tone now? What we do is we lighten the value and we warm it up. So we lighten the value simply by adding in white, okay? I won't do it in the entire puddle for now, I'll just do it to the edge. We warm it up by adding a little bit of the yellow and a little pinhead of the red, okay? Probably a little bit more white. So we'll mix that into the mix that we've already got there. Okay, and that's, so it's got to be a grey highlight tone. If I just test that along the top there, that's a little bit too grey, I need to warm that up more. Okay, so we'll warm it up with a bit more yellow than that. Okay, let's have a look here. Still a little bit too on the grey side. So it's just a matter of just do little tests like I've done there. I'll pull a bit of paint out of the brush. We'll get some more yellow ochre in there. And that's really warming it up there now. The thing we don't want to do is go too far with it. I'll pull a little bit more of the shadow tone into it. And let's test that. Yeah, that is the tone that we're looking for. So we've got sunlight catching along the top here. There, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to feel where we might have some highlight the tops of ridges of trees and things. Okay. Could go just a tiny little bit greener, so a little touch more blue in there. So I'm going to use this tone along the top part, and then I'm going to just tone it right back as it gets further down into the belly there. So the sun's sort of coming from over my shoulder in this way, sort of on that angle. Okay, I'm just looking at my photo reference. So now I'll pull more of that blue in so that it's closer to the tone that we painted the shadow with. Okay, I'll get even more of that in there. And as it gets lower down, it's catching less of the sunlight. So what I'll do now, I'll mix up a mid-tone green, which is going to be our blue and our yellow ochre. Okay. Get a little pinhead of red in there, not too much, a little bit more yellow ochre. Okay, now, the sunlight's coming from this side, so I want to keep this side over here more in the, don't want that much paint on the brush. You know, a little bit more on the dark, so we won't put too much mid-tone over on this shadowy side. And again, we don't want to lose all of that shadow that we put into that tree either. So remember, this is the mid-tone, it's not our highlight. Okay, that's all right. And I'll go just a bit more on the red side for this one, just so we get a bit of a different feel there. So I'm just using really delicate little brush marks, and I'm just trying to shape up the foliage in the way I imagine it would be. I mean, I'm using my reference of my painting that I did on location there. I'll use a medium brush so we can creep up on it. So we'll take our blue, we'll take the yellow. Let's just see how that looks. Okay, so it's going to be fairly bright, probably a touch too bright for this side. It might be okay over here, so I'll just add in some yellow ochre into that. And by adding the yellow ochre, all I'm doing is just stopping it being so happy and bright, you know what I mean? Again, as I always say with the darks, you don't want to lose all your darks, or you don't want to lose all your midtones either. Take more cadmium yellow, a little bit more of the red. More cad yellow. Okay, just offload some of that paint and then just lay the tip. Okay, too much paint in the brush. So offload it on the backboard there. I'm not convinced I've got the values just right on this one, but we'll wait and see. Whoop. And now we can start hitting it with some greens. Okay, so we'll start off with a mid-tone green. I'll just add blue into that yellowy mix there, and we'll just really just put in some streaks of that colour, and hopefully that paint adjustments I've just done were wet enough. If they're not, just give it a little squirt with the bottle, with the water bottle. So you don't have to get reflections, you know, perfectly matching up. That's the thing that a lot of us worry about, is getting, how do I get that bit of green to match that? Don't worry about it, right? And then what I'm going to do is take our white, our red, and our yellow. So I want a light orangey tone, like so. Again, a little drop of water. Okay, and then this is the part where we then have to really just focus in on getting it in the right spot. little branches like so. And a couple more on this one. By adding these little touches, it'll just make the reflections sit down in the water. Look a lot more realistic. But overall, I think, you know, it's not a bad little version. I'll show you. This was the one I did on site in oils. So oils obviously allow you to do different things from what the acrylics do. And you can get more subtle blends, whereas acrylics go a little bit chunkier. But I think overall, we've managed to capture a reasonably good rendition today of the reflections at Wappa Dam. So I think you'll enjoy this one. Learning how to do the reflections is a great thing, because when people see reflections in a painting, they're always mesmerised by them. They wonder how you've done them. And well, I've just shown you how you do them. You know, you paint them vertically, and then you put some water shimmer over the top, and that seems to settle them into the water a bit more. So definitely one to have a go at, and I think you'll enjoy this one. So thanks very much for watching this episode of Learn to Paint TV. Make sure you check out underneath me all the other episodes of Learn to Paint TV, and you can do that by going to www.learntopaint.tv, and then you can grab your free course and register for the free course, which goes into more detail of the Moore method of painting and what we've shown you here today. You can find that at www.learntopaint.academy underneath me here. And if you go to that site, which is where all of our online courses are, you'll see the free course there. Register for that one and study it in a bit more detail. Until next week, happy painting, and thanks for watching Learn to Paint TV. Cheers.